What if I told you the most perfectly planned crime in history had only one victim, and that victim was also the criminal? This is a story about a man who spent 10 years planning something so twisted that when it was finally over, nobody could arrest him, because technically, no law had been broken. Welcome to the story of Daniel Mercer, the man who committed the perfect crime against himself. Daniel Mercer was not a criminal. He was an accountant, quiet, invisible, the kind of man you would walk past on the street and immediately forget. He worked at the same firm for 22 years, never promoted, never noticed, never remembered. He ate the same lunch every single day. He drove the same car for 14 years. He had no friends, no family, no enemies. He had absolutely nothing. And one day he decided that was the most dangerous thing in the world, because a man with nothing to lose has nothing stopping him. One Thursday evening in November, Daniel came home, sat down at his kitchen table, and wrote a single sentence in a notebook. "I am going to steal everything from myself." He underlined it 3 times. Then he made a cup of tea and began to plan. Over the next 10 years, Daniel did something that was completely invisible to everyone around him. He quietly and carefully built a second identity. Not fake, not illegal, completely real. A second name obtained through a legal name change in a different county. A second address. A second bank account. A second life running parallel to his first one like a shadow that nobody could see. Every single month for 10 years, he deposited small amounts of money into the second account. Never enough to trigger any financial flags. Never enough to draw any attention. Just enough to slowly, quietly, build something. He was patient in a way that most people are simply not capable of. Because Daniel Mercer had nothing else to do with his time. No one was waiting for him at home. No one was calling to check on him. He had 10 years of complete and total silence, and he used every single second of it. Then on January 1st of his 60th birthday, Daniel Mercer disappeared. He closed his original bank account. He handed in his resignation letter without explanation. He cancelled his lease. He donated every single possession he owned to a local charity. His furniture, his clothes, his books, everything. And he walked out of his old life carrying absolutely nothing. He left behind one single envelope on his kitchen counter. It was addressed to nobody. Inside, it said only this: "I have been robbed of everything by someone I cannot name." His employer reported him missing the following Monday. Police were called. They found the envelope. They found the completely empty apartment. They found a man who had seemingly vanished off the face of the earth without a single trace. But then they found something else. Security footage from the building showing a second man entering the apartment the night before Daniel disappeared. Same height, same build, same coat, but a completely different name written in the visitor log. The second identity. Daniel had visited himself as someone else to make it look like he had been robbed by a stranger who had never existed. The detective assigned to the case spent 3 months trying to track down the suspect from the CCTV footage. She ran the name from the visitor log through every database available to her. She found a real address, a real bank account, a real and completely legitimate history stretching back a decade. And then she found something that made her stop completely. The fingerprints lifted from the visitor log were identical to Daniel Mercer's. Not similar. Identical. The man who had visited Daniel the night before he disappeared was Daniel. He had robbed himself, framed himself, and then simply become the other person. The detective sat in her car outside the station for a very long time before she went back inside. Here is the part that makes this story truly mind-bending. No crime had technically been committed. Daniel had not stolen from anyone else. He had moved his own money into his own account. He had changed his own name legally. He had donated his own possessions voluntarily. He had visited his own apartment under a different name he had obtained legally. Every single thing he had done was completely within the law. The only thing he had done that was remotely questionable was waste 3 months of police time. And even that was borderline. The detective closed the file. She wrote a single note on the front of it. Victim and suspect are the same person. Case unresolvable. And that was the end of it. The file went into a drawer. The investigation was closed. No charges, no arrests, no follow-up. Daniel Mercer, or whatever name he was living under now, was somewhere out there, breathing clean air, waking up every morning as someone new, living his second life quietly and completely free, finally invisible, on purpose, finally a man with nothing, who had chosen nothing and found that it felt like everything. Every week on this channel, one story, sometimes real, sometimes fictional, always the kind that stays with you long after it ends. If this one got under your skin, hit subscribe. We do this every single week. And drop a comment below. If you were Daniel Mercer, would you have done the